it away. So I'm just going to pop into the comments right here and read one from Sean Reddy, who says, no more charity. This is a business that people will be interested in. People are bored with what's out there now. Another person mentions it's a great point: investment over aid, co-production over extraction. So you guys who are out there listening and you have if you happen to have questions, please use the chat. We're going to chat amongst the panel for about another 15, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. And so the panel is where we'll see that there are questions if you have them, and I'll call on you to unmute you, and then you can join in on the conversation. But I want to pivot a little bit because I teased this. So Azza, you mentioned French films. We're talking about France specifically in one of your answers. And so I want to go to a French film by a woman of Senegalese, the daughter of Senegalese immigrants. So this is Maimouna Dukore. And of course, this has been making lots of headlines and lots of waves because of the way that it was depicted and advertised. So this is the film Cuties on Netflix. And it involved the streaming platform, Netflix, showing a picture, a poster of some kind of tween girls in costumes that were pretty scantily clad. And there was a synopsis about them being fascinated with becoming twerkers for a dance crew. People from Ted Cruz to Nancy Pelosi's daughter, Christine Pelosi. So this is both sides of the aisle here, at least in the US. You have Muslims who are up in arms. You've got lots of people who are really, really upset. And so I bring this up to talk about the fact that as an artist or as someone who is working with artists, once you bring your art out into the world, it kind of leaves your hands. And what must that feel like? What do you make of this controversy? And do you think of yourself in it? Like, do you see yourself as ever being embroiled in something like this that might get out of your hands? Idil, I'll give that to you first.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen the film. I've been in a bit of a bubble the last few days, so I'm just coming up to speed on a lot of this conversation.
It's okay, most people who are talking about it haven't seen the film.
Yeah, but in terms of, yes, you make something and you put it out in the world, you never know how it's going to land and how it's going to be perceived. And sometimes that's cultural, you know, she's French and Senegalese, and sometimes that's, you know, the times, like you don't know what the zeitgeist or how people feel and how they're responding to the art or whatever you've created. I do want to see the film so that I can be better informed. I've heard mixed feelings about it, and so I've been trying to tune out so that I can tune in, watch it, and then see and read the controversy as well. But yes, you make something, you hope that it resonates, and I'm sure it's a nightmare for her to have it turn into what it has evolved into.
You know, I've watched a few interviews of hers, you know, of like the Sundance interviews that she's done, and we're talking about the topic and what her inspiration was. And Maimouna said that she went to actually kind of like one of those community shows, and all these girls came dressed in that way, in terms of like very young adults, teenagers, you know, like 11, 12, 13, and dancing in very provocative ways. And in front of her were seated all these like, you know, beautiful West African women dressed in their traditional clothes. And Maimouna herself was cringing because like she could see some of the people, the girls in the audience of Arab or African origins, and knowing herself being Muslim, how will that be perceived? Yeah, right? So she started this whole creative process for like 3 years or such until she wrote the script and shot the film. And of course at Sundance, it was amazing and all of that. And because of a poster, and some people, you know, they haven't even seen the film and just reacted from the poster, right? Without really watching it. And going with Idil is like, I haven't watched it either. But for me, from what I have seen in terms of backlash, a lot of it, and funny enough, most of like the fundamentalist Muslims and the fundamentalist Americans, both of them came and joined together, you know, in unison. So that really tells you a lot about fundamentalism out there, you know. So they came out of the woodwork. So thank you guys. You both of you guys have a lot in common. Let's just say that. So which is great. And someone like myself, who's Black Muslim, who was raised in Paris, I've also been faced with this idea of assimilation, right? The French are very different from Americans. You know, you can be American and of all different colors and shades. in France, it's like they pretend to be wanting to be okay for you to be with all shades. And I was talking with Areej a few days ago, and I said, my problem, probably not with the film, but the topic of it, is the idea, you know, as a young Black Muslim girl, like you have to assimilate for you to become French and really leave your kind of your culture and your religion for you to become French, right? And that's my problem with it. It's the idea of like, okay, go ahead and do you and be you and such. But it's like, why was this film picked, for example? Why was this film, why did it win so many awards? I'm not questioning her talent. I think her talent is fantastic. Her work has been, even in the past, really very distinguishable for a very young African woman. But I think for me, overall, I have a certain questions in the terms of the response of the film, but as well in terms of what she is asking herself as a filmmaker, the topic of assimilation in French society. I think those two are very interesting to me. Mm-hmm.
Areej, did you want to weigh in?
I think Azza and Idil said it all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give a final question before I then open it up for a Q&A, but Areej, I'll give this to you. Is this a fad? You know, are we looking at, you know, Black is in right now, Black creativity, supporting Black creatives globally.
Yes.
It is a thing that we're seeing right now. It does seem like it's on the rise, but does there come a point where it plateaus and then it's like, oh, no, we did Black people 5 years ago, we're done. We have moved on. We don't need any more of those stories. Do any of you, and I'd love all of you to weigh in on this, on whether you think this is something that has lasting ability in the industry, because of course the stories will always be there.
Look, I think a lot of people are asking that. You know, I see media articles about this in my scrolling every day. Is it a fad? Is it a fad? I'm hearing from different people, at least in our industry, that there are a ton of people who are giving, like, again, lip service to this, even in Hollywood, but functionally speaking, in terms of how they're giving out contracts at their companies and the projects that are actually getting made, it's not on the same level. They're still sort of operating the same way, but it's more of a PR type hollow obsession. And I think that it's a bigger question than is it just a fad in terms of Black creativity and everyone being interested in it. I think the question ultimately is, did the summer of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, was that a pivot point in the history of this country? And it'll all flow from what this movement means, what happened in every single industry, not just creative industries. Every single industry that we've seen that has been sorry and changed their branding and been making promises, how much they put their money where their mouth is, you know, and it'll be years until we understand from historians what this time really was and what was produced and made. Having said that, I don't really personally, especially with statement films, and I think I speak for Azza too, this is not a fad for us. You know, like, this is what we're doing, and that's kind of all that we need to know. And so we hope that people are as receptive to this next summer as they were this summer and moving forward. We'll see.
Can I add to that, Malika?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I was just say, one, I wholeheartedly agree. And two, I think that it's about unapologetically making Black content for us, by us, and putting it out there in the world and hoping, you know, one, that it resonates with us and then ultimately finds a wider audience. And I think that there's a shift in control of narrative and story and creation. And the more we create, whether that's on the continent or elsewhere, there will be audiences to take that content in. So it's about making your projects, and by any means necessary, and ultimately we'll find a home somewhere because it will resonate and it will be impactful and entertaining for people to want to tune in and see that. That's my opinion. So I don't think it's going anywhere. It's not a fad. I think people are just now tuning in, you know, in a way that they haven't before. They've widened the aperture because we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole, in all different sectors, I don't think just in the arts or in film particularly, that we've just kind of come out of the woodwork. I think that behind the scenes, we've done a lot of the work, and it has just been a wave throughout the years, right? Where it's become something that is seen and admired and loved and great. And then it has go back and doing work behind the scenes, and then you see something that is wrong and coming back again. I'm saying this because I feel like, let's say in the 90s, back in the States and such, somebody like Oprah Winfrey, she really kind of set the stage for something that you can have a talk show host that is Black, right? And then you come to Africa here, you have a lot. Before it was very male dominated, and then suddenly you have different women having that stage. So that's when it comes to media. But overall, I think that I don't think this time it is, because I think that as women ourselves, we've really kind of united more and really have had this idea of like long-term sisterhood and cross-continental. Like it's no longer just us being here. It's, you know, connecting with our sisters in the Southern Africa, connecting with sisters in Jamaica, you know, all kind of different places that of color. And I think it's a threat, you know, we're quite powerful. And I think we're coming to take it all, honey. Yeah.
Snap was appropriate. Okay, that is a great place to pivot. We're taking it all. Let's go to questions, because there are a few in the chat. So I am going to first go to, and please apologies if I butcher your handles, because I don't even know if these are your real names, but your Zoom handles is what I will go by. Khudi Khani, he is asking a question about raising funds. So I'm unmuting you and go for it.
Hi.
Khulkhani?
South Africa, Cape Town. I just wanted to find out with regards to
Hi, we can't hear you. Can you turn up your volume, please?
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Welcome.
Okay, cool. Yes. Okay, Kuligani from Cape Town. I just wanted to find out with regards to raising funds. You guys touched on it in regards to aid versus investment. I just wanted to find out how difficult has it been for you guys to raise funds, and what has really worked for you guys, and what do you see yourself continue doing so that you guys get your movies to like Hollywood's status in terms of actually making revenue?
So I think I'll take this one since this has been the story of my life for 4 months. The African film and media market is growing exponentially, particularly in the next 5 years. So right now, those markets are valued at about $2.3 billion a year. It's growing fast, and to give some more specific context, the streaming market alone will have gone from $200 million in revenues in 2019 to over $1 billion in revenues by 2025. So I think that there's definitely, the numbers make a case for this market and its growth potential. That's number one. In terms of us raising money, we are actually just entering the beginning of our raise period now. So happy us, good luck to us, all the blessings. There's a lot of interest already. We've sort of been talking to investors about this since the spring as we put our strategy together. I think we'll be successful. I think other independent companies looking to make this content will be too, just given the growth potential of the industry that we're looking at. So it's the kind of thing that you kind of would imagine it as like a venture emerging market model, where even if the individual unit economics of each independent film are not like crazy profits, because we will be doing art house cinema, the company itself will be worth a lot more than it is now in 5 to 10 years because of the growth of this market.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
What about you? Because with your projects, how has that been difficult for you, finding funding and finding donors?
Each project is different. For my short film, I did crowdfunding, and then I financed our post-production because I was expanding into more directing at that point. I was transitioning in my career. And then what was great about that is it allowed and provided total creative control. And luckily, we then got distribution afterwards, so it was acquired by Canal Plus, which is something that I didn't mention earlier, but there's wonderful African women in the distribution space distributing African content. And so Claire Diao, who runs Sudu Films, distributed, SEGA, and then it got acquired by Canal Plus. So that's not always the case. Some other films might have funding already in place, or private investors, as Areej was saying, might put in seed money for the films, and then you make the film and then, hope that it gets picked up. So each project has its own life cycle in terms of funding streams. But increasingly now it's about finding private investors who believe in the project and see the potential of it and put in financing so that you can then ultimately sell it or get marketing for it.
So we got a question from Claude. Claude, go ahead, on intellectual property.
Hi, thank you so much for this discussion. I'm just wondering, having been a media entrepreneur, now a film producer, pretty much now for my whole career, the issue of IP is really, really tricky, especially if you're looking for international distribution. And I kind of dealt with that with my most recent film, The Great Green Wall, which is about the wall of trees that is being built along the Sahel from Senegal all the way to Djibouti. And I'm wondering what strategies you might have thought of to protect your IP, because it's really, really tricky.
Is that for me or for?
For whoever,
whoever,
yeah, all of you.
In terms of
deal for sure.
Okay, hi Claude. In terms of protecting IP, honestly, it's a tricky one because it's not easy, as you know. But if it's a script, a screenplay, you register it with at least in the States, the WGA, the Writers Guild Association. If it's a documentary IP project, you would want to keep that close because you don't want it to circulate too widely. So it's implementing NDAs with people that you want to share the idea with. That being said, it's hard. It can be challenging because there can be 5 films on one subject. So it's about discerning who you're sharing your early stage creative work with, and how you share that material. And when you're at a point to share something more widely, it's about creating materials that are that you feel comfortable sharing more widely. It doesn't have all of your creative IP in that. It's maybe a one-pager or a log line or something, or a very short proposal, so that you're not giving all of your creative ideas and heart out there in the universe for somebody else to take and make. But that being said, it's hard to get projects off the ground. So I wouldn't be too tight-fisted with it. You're going to need collaborations and people working with you to bring your ideas to life.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sean has a raised hand, so I'm going to guess that that's also a question. So Sean, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm still familiarizing myself with the Zoom.
I think we all are.
Yeah. so my question is very specific to Areej. You mentioned about 5 minutes ago, like a couple minutes ago, a bunch of stats with regards to the African film market and the rate of growth. Selfishly, would you mind sharing that in some way, or if you have a link or just anywhere you might have got that information? Because I'm calling in from New York, and I just look at some of these things as just as really like just business opportunities that are not like. I just think there's people that are around the world that are interested in content, and a lot of more diverse content, especially with the platforms that have really blown up, in the last bunch of years, like just tossing out a name like a Netflix or something like that. And so, I just think it's really about, assembling these distribution networks and financing networks that understand these and whatnot. So just my question is, could you please, when you get a chance, or if it's possible, share with me any of that information, because I'm not in your space, but I'm very, very interested in the opportunity in that space. And I look at your space as very simply like a huge opportunity for a lot of people. And that's it.
Sean, what I'll do is I'm putting in the chat box right now my email address. If you want to email me, I'll send you our general deck. It has everything.
Oh, that'd be terrific. Thank you.
Awesome. I also love the convergence. Like, so even if you're not in this general space, like this is, I think there's something that everyone can learn from and collaborate with on this. And so I love being part of this and seeing that happen in action.